I
So
love it.
are you going to write a follow-up with hobos in the book?
I'm not so sure I'll do that. But I'm glad that kids are going to St. Augustine. And
Yes, I love it. I love it.
one of my goals in using these historic places is to get kids to say, I want to go there someday, because then they'll learn. In fact, with my book, Trouble on the St. Johns River, I take my characters up to the Georgia Sea Turtle Center on Jekyll Island, and they learn all about sea turtles. And there's a wonderful bookstore associated with the Sea Turtle Center, and they invite me up to do book signings because they carry my books in the store.
Nice.
And every time I've been up there doing a book signing, at least one family has come in and said, we're here today because of your book. Now,
oh, nice.
As a teacher, that's what it's all about. So I love that. I also wrote two other books that we haven't discussed yet. Ghosts on the Coast, A Visit to Savannah and the Low Country. That takes place in Savannah and Charleston. And my hook to get kids reading in that book was ghosts. They tell wonderful ghost stories up there. Kids love ghost stories. So I only picked historic places that the mother in the story is writing her three kids to that had a ghost story associated with it. And that keeps kids interested.
Well, and adults too, because my husband's from Charleston, and that ghost tourism is like a big thing up there.
Yeah. And then my fifth book is called Lost in Boston. And whoops, just fell on the floor. Lost in Boston. And in that book, I take my characters to the Paul Revere House, to the Old North Church. They tour the USS Constitution. And again, my wildest dream is that I'm going to get an email one of these days after the virus is under control that sends me an email and says, my family went to Boston this summer and we went to the Paul Revere House in the Old North Church. Now, I also understand my audience, so they also go to Fenway Park to see a Red Sox game.
Of course.
Because I know that boys are into sports and Red Sox. So
girls.
And girls.
Yeah.
And girls very much.
I was going to say, I know you're a Red Sox fan too, Jane.
In the very first book, Voices in St. Augustine, I established that one of my main characters, Joey, is a Red Sox fan. And so that's how I was able to follow up on that. But it's so much fun visiting these places and then thinking of ways that I can weave it into a story that kids would find interesting.
Well, on that note, we do have some aspiring authors listening to the show. Do you have any advice for people who want to write a book?
Definitely. First off, they need to be writing, just writing and practicing their craft. They need to be attending workshops. They could be virtual workshops. They need to buy books, sit in on sessions at book festivals, at book conferences. That's good networking. When you go to these kinds of conferences, you'll learn a lot from the sessions, the presenters, but you'll also learn a lot from the other people attending.
Absolutely.
I always learn as much, at the lunch table or at breakfast the next day or in the hallway when you connect with somebody that's writing the same kind of books you are, or you realize you've got a problem with something and you ask somebody, I've got a problem with my social media. Is there somebody here I should be talking to? And they can direct you, say, oh yeah, go talk to him because he's great at it. And so I really think that if you're an aspiring author, you need to get proactive, practice your craft, learn more about it, but also learn about the publishing industry. If you're just going to write your book for family and friends, then that's one thing. But if you're publishing with the idea of selling books, then you need to learn about the publishing industry. And there's organizations out there that can help you with that. I am a member, and I know, Angelina, you've been a member of the Florida Authors and Publishers Association.
Yep.
And we do a conference every year. This year it's going to be in Orlando on July 30th and 31st. And it's a great place for people to come and network and learn and ask questions. And I found that to be probably the most helpful thing when I was starting out, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I knew I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I leaned on other people.
Well, it is interesting because you and I have both had long careers doing other things. And when I started writing, I was really shocked at how helpful and caring the community was, because people that didn't even know me wanted to tell me oh, this is good for marketing, or you should meet this person over here because they can help you, with book distribution. Or it just was kind of overwhelming because people don't normally want to help other people, especially new people in a new profession.
I found authors and publishers to be extremely sharing and helpful. I found that also with teachers, but there are a lot of, I know in the corporate world, it wasn't always that way. They didn't want to give away their best secrets, whatever you were asking about. And everybody was kind of parochial, I'm doing my thing. And they would like to steal ideas, but they didn't want to share ideas. I have found in the writing and the publishing industry, people are very sharing, and we've all been there. We've all had the same challenges that they're facing. And some of us have overcome some of them, and some of us are still learning. I still attend a lot of webinars. I go to conferences, book festivals, sit in on sessions, and I'm still learning, partly because the industry is changing so rapidly.
Right. Well, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what's the hardest part of being an author, do you think?
Well, the hardest part for me is the business side of it. I love the writing, it's very creative. I love the research. I love meeting people, doing book signings, speaking at book festivals and conferences, and obviously meeting kids. But then there's the business side of it. I don't mind the marketing. I like that because I like to talk, I like to meet people. But then there's this thing called book distribution and mailing things out and keeping track of all the records. I've got to keep track of my sales tax. I've got to keep track of what's my inventory. When do I need to order more books? How many do I order this time? I mean, I keep joking that I'm into words, not numbers. That was never my strength. But
Right.
you have to do a certain amount of that if you're going to publish a book. Even if you have a publisher, there's still all those business aspects that you need to be aware of. And that's just, for me, just plain work. I'm not an accountant, but I get my calculator out and I keep track of things. So the fun parts I thoroughly enjoy. And then there's the parts that I have to work at. But any job or any career that you're in, it's got some hard parts that you just got to learn how to do it.
Well, now you are what we call in the business hybrid published. So you've actually had a publisher publish you, and now you're self-publishing. Can you talk about why you're doing that self-publishing now?
When I started out, I had a publisher. I was very fortunate because it's hard to get a publisher these days. And I got one immediately. They loved my St. Augustine book, and we published it. And then what happened literally was when I was into the second book and we hadn't quite released it yet, they informed me they were going to go into more of website development and art and different things, and they weren't going to take on any more authors. They strongly suggested that I start my own company and self-publish, partly because my big audience is schools. And if I went with another publisher, publishers don't know how to market to schools. I knew how to do that. And they said, Jane, you'd be silly to give away the ranch, all the profit, because you give a big chunk of the profit away to the publisher. They
Yes.
said, you need to do your own thing. And I really resisted because I didn't want to do the business side of it. But my husband and my oldest son, who is a math wizard, said, Mom, I'll help you. I'll show you how to do all this. I'll set up Excel documents for you that are Jane friendly. And so I made the leap. I was nervous about all the legal stuff. How do you do a copyright page? How do you do distribution? How do you do everything? But I learned mostly by asking other people. They always say there's no dumb questions, but you always feel like you're asking a dumb question when it's you. I asked lots of questions and I made mistakes, but I jumped in and figured out how to do it. And I'm really glad I did. And it's not so much because you make more money. It's a little bit more work. Obviously, if a publisher is taking care of all that, you don't have to deal with it. But it was more about control. When you go
Right.
with a traditional publisher, they're going to pick the title, they're going to pick the cover, they're going to pick the sales price, They're going to pick the date when it's going to be released, which could be 18 to 24 months down the road, or they could hold on to it and never publish it. But because you've signed a contract with them, you can't do anything with it either. So I wanted the control. Now, having said that, I still use professionals. I use professional editors, which means I pay them. I use a professional book formatter and a professional cover designer. These are things I don't know how to do. So if I don't know how to do it well, I'm going to pay somebody how to do it. And I also use an accountant to keep me straight with Uncle Sam. You know, there's a lot of write-offs with self-publishing, and I keep meticulous records of everything, even my mileage. If I jump in the car to go to the post office to mail an order to Amazon, I track my mileage, and I want to make sure that I'm certainly getting all of the write-offs that I can get, but that I'm getting all the legal write-offs. I don't want to ever, if I ever get audited, I want to be very comfortable that everything I've taken care of is done properly.
Well, and I think that you've touched upon a lot of interesting things, and hopefully somebody out there, I know there's a lot of people that lost their jobs because of COVID, and, you know, or maybe they even got their hours reduced. Maybe you've kind of ignited that fire under them and motivated them today to actually put their thoughts down on paper and get that book made. Now, I know the importance of an editor, and that's probably my biggest pet peeve with people who want to write a book. They don't realize how very, very important it is to have an editor. Can you kind of touch upon that?
Extremely important. I'm a former English teacher. You know, I figured, hey, I've written the book. This thing is pretty good. Boy, was I wrong. And there's different kinds of editors. You have your content editor, which talks about the flow of the story. You know, oh, you forgot to mention this, you know, so they'll catch that. Then you have the editor that's looking for all the grammar and the sentence structure and all that. And they're all very important. I never argue with my editors. And I'm always amazed, even though I've read it and reread it many times, and I think it's letter perfect, it never is. And so editing is very, very important. And it really bothers me and other people who self-publish, and we see books that somebody just put out there because it's so easy to put it up as an ebook or publish it through, you know, a company or Amazon, and it's got all kinds of mistakes in it. It makes us all look bad. So I am very adamant about encouraging people, not just encouraging, demanding that they have a professional editor go over it, because it's very, very important. And even then, we still miss things. You know, we go through the first printing, and myself and several editors and other people say, how did we miss that? It's just human. But, you know, the next printing, I fix it when I go into another printing.
Well, my mom was so funny because I won't say the author's name, but she had a very huge author's book, and she found several mistakes and she kind of highlighted them, and we were giggling over it. And I said, look at this person from this huge publishing house with all these horrible, it felt like they uploaded the draft. It was unbelievable. And the level of this author, I was like, wow, I'm sure heads rolled over that, but we had a good giggle over it. Now, one of the things that your organization FAPA does is book awards. Now, can you talk about how people could enter their book awards if they do have a completed book?
That's really good. I'm glad you mentioned that. We have our final deadline for this year's book awards submissions is April 30th. And your book doesn't have to be completely published yet. You do have to have it in an ebook version. I mean, you don't have to have a hard copy out yet. And you can submit it. You simply go to the website for Florida Authors and Publishers Association, which is myfapa.org. And you can just click on book awards and it will walk you through the submission process. Book awards are very valuable when it comes to marketing your book. All of my books have gotten numerous book awards, some of them big national awards. And that really helps with my marketing and my sales, because somebody's in a bookstore or they're on Amazon and they're looking at my book and another book just like it, and they see that my book got an award. What that tells them is it was vetted. It went through some kind of process where people judged it. And once it's been judged, they decided it was worthy of an award. Usually you get 2 or 3,